Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and my guest today is what's your name?
Joaquin Phoenix.
I thought you were gonna say when I introduce you, can I introduce you as the Joker,
I was trying to remember what his name was, like the actual character, but
Arthur Fleck?
there we go. That's the one. That's who I am.
So, and we're going to talk about, if you can't guess, we're talking about the film Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. So, if you haven't seen the movie, it just left HBO Max. So, good luck. Hopefully, you can find it somewhere else. But if you have seen this movie, we are going to get into spoiler territory. So, that's the best place to be. And yeah, if you haven't, then hopefully you can find it and then check us out. Or if you don't care about spoilers, come and watch us. But we are getting into spoiler territory. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. When I first saw this movie, I saw this movie in theaters when it came out in like what 2019, and back when going to theaters was a thing. And I remember thinking to myself, "This is a really good movie. I never have to watch it again." Like, what are your thoughts? How'd you feel when you saw this movie?
When I watched it, I thought it was good. I was like, this is an excellent movie. I didn't necessarily have a good time because it was so dark. But then I forgot about it, and all I remembered was that it was a good movie. So when we decided to do this for the show, and we started rewatching it, or I started rewatching it, I was like,
Mm.
I'm not having a good time because I've already seen this, and it's not the kind of movie that you want to watch twice because there's no reason. It's kind of like how do I
Get the point.
explain? Like, why put yourself through it twice? Like, it's great. It's a great movie. It's beautiful. It tells you so much. It's a piece of art, but it is hard to watch. And watching it a second time, especially when you know what's gonna happen already, you're just waiting for more darkness, more, and you know the darkness is gonna come, and it takes so much darkness to get to the darkness that it's just hard to watch it a second time.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I just felt uncomfortable the entire time while I was watching it. Literally, it's you see the scene one of the scenes that unnerved me was when he's standing there getting like chewed out by his boss after his boss was basically telling him that you need to return the guy's sign or I'm going to take it out of your pay. And he's just sitting there smiling. And it just is such an unnerving moment because the camera just like slowly pushes in on him. And he's just sitting there just smiling the entire time as he listens. And then the music, like music really works well in this movie because any moment that you could be thinking that, oh, this is like could be a fun or playful moment, the the music just slowly starts to just creep in, and it it the whatever the sounds that they choose to use are sounds and like strings and chords that are very low and like almost like a horror movie, and nothing is really happening, but you're seeing him do these actions by himself a lot of the times, but you're hearing the sound that's in the song and or the music that's accompanying it, and it just builds this eerie, uncomfortable feeling in you as the viewer. And going through the movie for the second time, I every time a scene like that popped up, I always found myself just being like, "This, I don't feel good right
Yeah, I even had to take a break because it was just a lot for me. And it's not really just like the music or like what's happening. It's really like the details when now that you have already seen it, you have time to really pay attention to the little details, and I think that's like part of what really like brings you down because you know that it's gonna stack up and stack up and stack up and ultimately drive this character to become the Joker. And it's kind of sad because it really does, like, it's not made up stuff. This stuff happens to people in real life, and I think that's partially why it's so hard to watch because it's like every day. And when you think about crime and, you know, people who have mental health issues, and that, you know, all the violent things that you know, are a result of all of this happening, is like preventable. Like if we had a better system, if we had better healthcare, if we had people who are more educated in mental health disorders, and if we had people who were more accepting of people, we probably wouldn't have characters like this exist in real life, and we do. Maybe not like to this extent, but then also, yeah, there are some people who are, you know, lost to this extent where they commit crimes and murder and stuff like that. And this movie really highlights all, like, everything that could possibly go wrong for an individual happens to him, and it happens to a lot of people in real life.
Yeah, this movie is basically a mental health movie under the skin of a Joker movie. And like you really could have made this movie and not called it Joker, and it could have played out the exact same way. But they decided that they would they would cover in this veil of Gotham and Thomas Wayne and Joker, and then they'd make this movie that is just on its own. There's nothing necessarily too comic book. There's nothing that feels comic booky about this movie, other than the fact that we just know who the character is that the title is named for. But the actions that happen do play out almost kind of like a Taxi Driver type movie or something like that, where you just have a character that's slowly just losing themselves over time. And the good thing that plays well in this movie, but also plays well to the character of the Joker, is the unreliable narrator. Now, one of the movies that we're going to talk about again, or talk about after this, is going to be Birds of Prey. And that movie also has a quote unquote unreliable narrator, but not in the same sense that this movie does. That movie, they actually narrate to you. This movie doesn't actively have voiceover narration, but you can tell the story is being told from a perspective, even though a voice isn't expressly heard.
Yeah, definitely feel that, and you don't know about it until later on in the movie, when he goes to his neighbor's apartment, because they make you think that he has a relationship with her, like they become friends, maybe even lovers, and one day he shows up in her apartment and she is scared and she doesn't know why he's there. And then we get images of the reality of how she was never with him in those scenes that we'd seen previously. And that's when you really start to know that a lot of the stuff that has been told to us may not have been true. And then it becomes kind of like, what did he imagine and what did he not imagine? And then we find out that his mom is also delusional. So, like, the whole movie almost is like a sham.
Yeah, and it's really good because it plays in that sandbox of what is the truth, and by the end, you still don't know. There is no real way to tell. And ultimately, the truth doesn't matter. Well, the only thing that matters is what he believes the truth is. And even with the the girlfriend, like they played it off really well, because I remember he when she came to his door and said, "Hey, you were following me today," and they had that kind of cute interaction. And I remember thinking to myself, nobody's gonna react like that if they know that some dude had been following them all day long. And she just was like, "Oh, I thought that was you." And he has another moment where he like comes in from the rain and like goes in and just like opens her door and immediately just goes in and kisses her, like without having any prior conversation with her after that, like or before that. The only interaction was that knock on the door. Then the next thing we see them together in, he's kissing her, just walking in her house. Um, and I remember thinking, man, that's really weird. That doesn't seem right. And then the movie was like, yeah, you're right, because it didn't happen. So, and there's a lot of that in this movie. You brought up his mom and his mom being delusional, And so you ask yourself, okay, well, maybe she's crazy. Maybe she made this whole thing up. But then when she says, well, no, Thomas Wayne doctored the papers, and you think to yourself, well, he is a wealthy individual and he's not necessarily a nice man. So he actually could have done that. And now there's this question of who's actually telling the truth. And we never get that answer.
Yeah. Um, what I want to know, my question for you is if you think that he murdered the neighbor.
That was going to be my question to you too. And there, after the scene, the only hint, well, so the thing that happens when he leaves her apartment and he goes to his room, we hear an ambulance pass outside and see him laughing, and then that's it. So part of me is like, the ambulance is coming to check on, like, somebody heard something and they called the ambulance, and they're there to check on her. But we don't know. But she disappears from the movie. How and I really do feel like I have every reason to believe that she and her daughter are killed by him. What do you think?
I also think that they were murdered only because of the sirens. But he was also under investigation. So it kind of makes you wonder if that can even be a thing where they get murdered and they never even look at him when he lives in that building. So
Right.
there is that question, but I feel like there's a lot of that where they don't necessarily show every death or every murder, because the last scene is him walking out of the therapist's office, and the only
The
thing we
bloody
get are
shoe.
bloody footprints. So
Yeah.
if they would do something like that, I'm pretty sure that the sound of sirens tells enough. So,
Right.
in my opinion, I think he did murder them.
Agreed. I mean, there's a chance that he let him go because he let like the little person go in that one scene because the little person was nice to him, but this woman never really said anything to him outside of passing him on the elevator. So um, there is so we talked. You mentioned how the movie you don't find out until that moment where she's in her house that the narration is unreliable, but there's actually other parts earlier that start to hint at it. So you have the scene where he's looking at Murray on the television, and then he imagines himself in the audience, and then he's on the stage and he's talking to Murray, and then he's hugging, and Murray's like, "I wish I had a son like you," and then comes back to reality, and then he's sitting and watching. So that's one moment when they try to show you that he creates realities for himself, and then the other moment, which is a little more subtle, but is definitely intentional. He is given a revolver, right? A revolver has 6 shots without and then you have to reload. When he's on the train, he shoots the first person in the head once. He shoots the next person in the body 2 times. Then he shoots the guy that's running away once in the leg, and then afterwards, so he only should have 2 bullets left in his gun. But then when he walks up on the guy, he shoots him 4 times in the back. And so when you're watching that, you're like, for a movie that's this tight, for them not to remember that detail doesn't seem right. So that's most likely an intentional um, aspect of the film that the creator threw in there to also show how he's seeing the world in his mind. Because he also might not even be a victim.
That's interesting because when I saw that scene, I actually noticed the number of bullets as well. So I looked up how many bullets a revolver can have, and I saw that some revolvers can have 7 or 8 rounds.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, I
But yeah,
didn't
there's
realize
no
that.
really there's really no way to know because we don't know what kind of revolver it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's interesting because most times when you see a revolver, I think most people think 6 shots, but yeah, I didn't realize there were certain revolvers out there that can shoot 8. So yeah, but I mean, I would like to believe that it was his imagination, because of the fact that like there's so many other moments in this movie where it's him kind of creating realities for himself, and like him getting lost in these like moments of dance and things like that. And it just fits with the Joker himself because in I don't remember if this was in The Dark Knight or if this was just a general. I think this was a general Joker thing, but in The Dark Knight, Joker constantly like was lying about his past, right? You never, so you didn't know where he came from. When Heath Ledger's Joker was talking and like, how did I get these scars, right? And the thing about Joker is that you never know where he came from, and even though they had a Joker movie, we still don't fully know his backstory because of all of the lies and manipulations, which fits in with what Joker said in I guess this might have been the comic books where he said if I had to have an origin story, I prefer it to be multiple choice. And that's how this movie feels. It feels like a multiple choice movie. Is he the son of Thomas Wayne? Is his mom delusional? Did Thomas Wayne doctor the reports? Is he actually adopted? What's the answer? We don't know. So we don't know where he came from.
Yeah. And it didn't really feel like an origin story. It just felt like a journey that we were going on inside someone's head.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, yes, it is definitely an origin story, a really good origin story. Um, but it didn't feel like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. No, I hear you there. It it can definitely just feel like a journey more, and because this the end of this movie doesn't feel like he's then gonna go and take on Batman, right? It doesn't really feel like that. But it's interesting that they also play with the idea that he might have created Batman through his actions because he got Thomas from Martha Wayne. But the thing is, though, he also wouldn't know about that. He wasn't there to see it. So unless he heard about it some like secondhand or something, there's no way he could actually know that that happened that night. So that's another question of is that him being a reliable or unreliable narrator? Is he making up his own story? We don't know. Um, so Stray Command said there are close-up shots of the gun where you can clearly see that it's a 5 or 6 shot revolver. In fact, I think you meant to say IMDb, but you said IMFDB. Identifies it identify specifically as a Smith and Wesson Model 36, which holds 5 shots. So that's interesting.
All right.
Um, yeah, there's a lot of questions, and I think that's the thing I like most about the movie is how much it makes us question reality without hearing the narrator say, "I'm telling you this story."
Yeah, because there's even like this one part where he gets that file from the hospital on his mom, and there's
Yes.
newspaper clippings in there, which I question because a medical file would not have newspaper clippings. So I feel like maybe those were conjured as well, like in his mind,
Mm-hmm.
to explain things. Um, but then, or it could just be a weird decision that the filmmakers made. Who knows?
Right. Exactly. There's constant like moments like that, and I think that that works well for this movie. The other thing that when I was watching this movie again, I had forgotten. Like I was going through the list of people I remembered him killing, and I was like, oh, he only kills like 4 people in this movie. And then as the movie kept going, I said, oh, wait a second, I forgot about this person, and I forgot about this person. And by the end, the total I think was 8 people that he actively causes the deaths of. If we assume that Zazie Beats and her daughter are also killed, because he has the 3 people in the subway, those two, and then he has his mom, which I forgot that he murders his mom in this movie, and he also has Randall, the guy that he worked with that he betrayed, and then the final death of the movie, which is Murray, and that's not even including how his actions might have caused the deaths of Thomas and Martha Wayne. So he surprisingly has a high body count in this movie
And the
to the point where
therapist
I
at the end.
forgot. Oh yeah, and the therapist at the end too, like assuming that she died as well. So it's it's crazy, and probably the most gory deaths are probably it's probably when he stabbed the guy to death and then bashed his head against the wall. That's probably the most graphic on-screen death, and then of course when he shoots Murray in the head on television. But yeah, it's a very disturbing. It's a very disturbing the scenes where he actually ends up killing people one of the questions I had for you is: do you think that he planned on killing Murray when he went on the show, or do you think that he was planning on killing himself, and then after talking with Murray for a little bit, decided that he'd rather kill him?
Yeah, I do think he wanted to kill himself, and then I think that conversation kind of gave him some clarity about the reason why he was there, and then his motives changed.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, he saw Murray as kind of a father figure, but
Right.
then he wasn't really getting that response from him. So it makes sense to me why he would just be like, well, you're not who I thought you were, so you can
Yeah.
go.
Exactly. He didn't even care about the consequences. And yeah, it definitely left me asking, because one of the messages, quote unquote, behind the movie is, or one of the things that happens is this whole idea of eating the rich, how the rich treat the poor and view the poor and treat them beneath them, and how the poor can rise up um, through anarchy or hate or anything else like that, and the Joker being basically like, I don't stand for anything. I'm just doing whatever I want. Um, it's very interesting how he basically inspires a movement without even trying.
I did think it was interesting that they showed Thomas and what was her name? Barbara,
Martha Wayne.
Martha.
Yeah.
Thomas and Martha Wayne getting murdered in the alley. I'm not sure if I liked it there. I think the first time I watched it, I was like, "Oh hey hey," like playing on the like
Mm-hmm.
what everyone already knows,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Um, but then when I look at the movie as a whole, I feel like
It
if
wasn't
you
needed.
didn't know about that,
It feels.
then it would be like, why are we seeing these people be murdered by other people? Um, because and the reason why I feel like it's a little off or like a little out of place is because this movie, like we said before, it didn't feel like a comic book movie. It just feels like a movie about a guy who becomes crazy, not necessarily
Yeah.
even becoming Joker as the villain. Because even at the end of the movie, he's still not a Joker villain. For
Yeah.
Batman, he's just a guy who calls himself Joker, and he's just a murderer. He's a serial killer.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really become a Batman villain until later. So seeing the whole thing with the Waynes getting murdered just felt a little out of place, because then that is very much a comic book thing.
Yeah. I remember the first time I watched it, I kind of had a similar feeling where I thought to myself, "Oh, that's cool." They tied it into Bruce's backstory as well, and you could say, "Oh, be a Batman." I mean, Joker created Batman, and then Batman creates the Joker later when he drops him in the vat of acid, whatever. But watching it this time, I felt to myself that it wasn't needed, the scene, and it actually almost played out to me like the studio saying, "Put a Batman reference in this movie." Because we got to make sure that people know that it's a Batman villain. Otherwise, then it just is some clown that's dressing up and murdering people. So we got to make sure that it actually is the Joker. And the only way we can know it's the Joker and not some random person is by having Batman. So it felt to me like a studio mandated scene of make sure you include this more so than a natural progression and element within the movie, because even the act itself, which you could argue is the point, but it feels random. It feels very random in the context of everything else that's happened. Because if that's the case, where this guy saw Thomas and Martha Wayne randomly and decided to kill Thomas Wayne, the likelihood is that a couple of other rich people died that night too.
Yeah, and then it becomes Batman's origin story instead of Joker's. But I think it was. I think without that scene, the Wayne mentions were tasteful. With
I agree.
Thomas Wayne being there, and then the whole scene with Arthur interacting with Bruce, and then Alfred. I think all of that was really tasteful, and it wasn't until that was enough for us. Like, if you're a Batman fan, you're gonna get it. You don't need the alley scene, and we don't need to see his parents get murdered. That's just a little on the nose. That's like, if you didn't know, this is a Batman related movie.
Exactly, right? So, all in all, my take of the movie is that it is a good movie, but it's not one that I necessarily wanted to watch a second time. And if we weren't wanting to talk about it for this show, I would not have watched it a second time. And the fact that it's off of HBO Max now, I don't feel like I lost anything. There's a good chance I'll never watch this movie again, and that's fine. But it's not a movie I can sit down and say, this is a fun movie that I feel good watching, so I want to turn it on. I had the experience, and I'm ready to move on.
The only time I think I would ever watch it again is so I could dress up like this at a party where we're watching this movie. But that would be a really weird party to go to.
Yeah, that doesn't seem... I don't know if you want to be at that party. You might want to leave. But yeah, anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
There's just some like cool little things, like when he crossed out that sign and made it say "Don't smile." That was a cool thing. And I also thought it was funny that he said when he was at the hospital getting his mom's file, he said, how do people wind up in here? Like, that just
like,
felt...
I like it here.
Yeah, it was just so, like it gave me, like, goosebumps, because I was like, oh, man, this is so, like, that guy doesn't even know he's talking to a crazy person. And that's such a crazy person thing to say at that place in particular. I thought that was great. One of the highlights of the movie.
Yeah, that interaction is awesome, and like, yeah, I mean, it's also one of those uncomfortable scenes, right, where you're just like, I hope this guy is gonna be okay.
Yeah, I mean, the details in general in this movie are so, like, spot on. It's just such a well-crafted movie. It's just not a well-crafted movie that you want to watch more than once.
Yeah, I mean, there are dark movies out there, but this is just one of those ones, like you said, once is enough, and in our case, twice. Twice is probably more than enough. It's more for a lifetime. We're good. Would you recommend this movie to people who haven't, would you recommend this movie to people who don't know anything about Batman or the Joker? And two, would you recommend it if people are Batman and DC fans?
I would maybe not recommend it to people who are not familiar with Batman, because then it's just a really sad, dark movie.
Mm-hmm.
Unless that's like the kind of movies that particular person enjoys. Then I would recommend it, but like, I would never just go up to random, like, not random people, but like to people that I know and be like, oh, you should watch this movie. But if we're talking about comics and stuff, and like, I know, like, Zane hasn't seen Joker before, I would tell Zane to watch it, but that's because I know she's, into comics and stuff, and I'm actually surprised that she hasn't seen it. But if people have already seen it, then I'm sure we can all agree that we've seen enough.
I don't need to see skinny as heck Joaquin Phoenix with bones and stretching and
that rib cage and his spine. You could see. I was like, is that for real, or did they CG that?
Nope, I'm pretty sure that's all him. He Christian Baled it. Like,
method
he
acting.
went full on. It's kind of not. But yeah, anything else?
No, that's all for me.
All right, and that's all for me too. That's all for this movie. So, have you guys seen The Joker? If you have, what did you think about it? Is it something you'd watch again, or Are you like us, where once was enough? Do you think that it was a good Joker movie? Do you think it was a poor Joker movie, but a good movie all in all? Whatever you thought, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, and subscribe, even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and my co-host has been,
The Joker.
and we'll see you guys next time.